To vultures, rats, and roaches, the cries of the wounded on the battlefield ring like church bells beckoning for communion, leaving bodies to flow through their bowels and back into the earth. But the carnage and pain of passing on plays a role not only in the circle of life, but in the afterlife as well. As the corporeal corpses of political casualties begin the ceremony of decomposing into dirt and bone, so too does the astral plane come alive with the scavengers of souls, an ecosystem like microbes turning bodies into gas invisible to our eyes. The loss of humanity, when we lose our humanity, sends signals to the world of the spirits and summon the demons of war. I didn't see you there.
It all started early this morning.
From hunting ghosts to Bigfoot, UFOs, cryptids, true crime, paranormal, and more.
I've always wanted to see a UFO.
Oh, I was researching for your entertainment.
That's Bigfoot's scat.
He basically wrote the book on modern culture.
We aren't really comedians.
What if Buddha did cocaine?
The Addams Family on meth. This is the Black Cat Report.
See you on the other side. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 96 of the Black Cat Report. My name is Gil, and with me today is the only man I'd elect to be my champion in battle, the swole soothsayer of the South, the missing muse of modern music. Some call him Jojo the Gargantuan, others Joey Baloney. But for me, he's just Joey. How you doing today, bud?
You know what? I am feeling swelled up. I just ate a pizza with chicken, broccoli, cheddar. So good. And it just made me feel even swoller than before. It's like, why are you making
you're
that
gonna be
face?
swole in the wrong areas. I'm glad we're not roommates. I don't want to be smelling that.
No, definitely not. No, but I'll be going to sleep after this, so it'll be fine. No big deal. I won't even be smelling it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, before we start off, we want to give an extra special shout out to everyone that tuned into last Saturday's live stream of Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen. We can't say enough about how much we've absolutely fallen in love with the community that shows up for B3 live streams. It's always y'all's calls and chats that make it great, and episode 4 was no exception, so thank you.
Thank you so much. It was really awesome.
If you missed it, don't worry. As always, sometime later this week, we'll be posting a replay here on whatever platform you're currently listening to this episode of the Black Cat Report. Now, as for the next episode of Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen, we're going to be playing a little game called Truth or Trash. Fans of Art Bell will know this one well. The rules of the game are simple. You call in and tell us a tale that's either truth or trash. Live stream listeners and hosts will vote on it, and when the poll results come in, you tell us, was it a well-played lie or a cross my heart, hope to die truth? So, if you've been sitting on the sidelines with no paranormal stories to share, then Saturday, June 1st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, it will be your chance to call in and tell us your wildest true story, or, if you want, you can lie through your teeth, trick your favorite hosts, and have a good laugh at our expense. A link to set a reminder for the June 1st live stream will be at the top of this episode's description. So, if you don't want to miss the truth or trash mayhem, make sure to give that link a quick click and sign up for a notification so you won't forget. All that said, with housekeeping out of the way, let's dive in. Now, this episode is going to be a concept piece. It's food for thought. We'll be dabbling in the appearance of creatures who are manifested by moments of mass murder. You see, a few months back, as I thumbed through what would eventually go on to become one of today's primary sources, the Encyclopedia of Demons in World Religions and Cultures by Teresa Bain, I noticed a small pattern. All over the world and throughout time, there seem to be demons or entities that almost only appeared during warfare. And while that's not, inherently shocking, right, as nothing but life itself can compete with the pain and suffering we bring to the world when we go to war, this pattern, these connections, they seemed different than, let's just say, extreme hallucinations and spiritual stress. There seemed to be a stronger connection as I was reading through and flipping through these pages, right? So
Yeah.
in the end, they cross cultures, continents, and are sometimes separated by thousands of years in time, popping up almost organically in completely unconnected and isolated regions. These demons of war, as I read on and I learned more, they all started to sound similar. Now, some of these demons will only be described in brief, as they are frankly so obscure to folks like us who live outside of the local culture that we only have very limited documentation brought to us by oral history, while for other demons, we'll have a longer written history available to us to reference. So this week, we're going to move through the folklore and mythology from Malaysia to the Brazilian Amazon to ancient Greece to Sri Lanka before hearing reports from the Vietnam War in the 1960s and modern-day Iraq. We ask you to keep an open ear out for doubt, an eye towards patterns, and a mind open for imagination. So get your fancy pen out, Joey. That means you got to take notes.
No notes are being taken right now. I'm taking a lot of mental notes.
With the history dating back to before the introduction of Islam, Buddhism, and Christianity, our first demon of war is the Hantu Pari, as referenced in Teresa Bain's encyclopedic masterpiece, quote, "From Indian and Malaysian folklore comes the nocturnal Hantu Pari, a demon that scavenges battlefields to lap up the blood of the dying and the newly dead. It is also said to appear in hospitals," end quote.
Ooh.
Now, you think that's bad? When very loosely translated from Malay to English, Hantu Pari means fairy ghost, or more properly, mermaid ghost. But unlike the mermaids, we associate with water, these mermaids swim through the blood of battlefields, preying on the wounded of the dead and dying. And while outside of a few references, most of which, to be honest, are a foreign Malaysian band with the same name, information about the that's true. Information about the Hantu Pari is damn near impossible for my Western search engines to find, making the Hantu Pari the least understood but still actively feared demon on our list today. With that said, I'll be adding a little more info about the Hantu Pari to our knowledge base here. Just a moment. Just you wait.
I will. I'm waiting.
Next, we're going to the Brazilian rainforest, to the Amazon, where, thanks to the work of anthropologists and the research of Teresa Bain, we have the description of a type of demon that, in all likelihood, we would have otherwise completely lost knowledge of, as the indigenous people, collectively known as the Apane, currently only have a native-speaking population of just 2,277.
Not a lot at all.
No, that is nothing,
Yeah.
And it is from these few holders of human history that the rest of the world has the opportunity now to learn about the Kupe-Dybe. Reading now from the Encyclopedia of Demons, quote, "Kupe-Dybe are a race of nocturnal, subterranean, demonic bat-like people from the mythology of the Apane people of the Amazon rainforest. These demons feed upon corpses and prefer to encourage the Apane people to go to war, so there will be bodies littering the jungle floor. If the Apane are not at war, the Kupe-Dybe will hunt them. Living in the caves of Bat Mountain, located in the Sierra of São Vicente, the lair of the Kupe-Dybe is distinctive, as it is located at the base of the mountain and has a large window-like opening above the entrance," end quote.
Sounds like the U.S. Congress right now. I was waiting for you to say, "and their cave had this very distinct symbol of similar to a pentagon."
Now, there's something I've come to notice here between our first two demons. When researching the Hantu Pari in Malaysia, one of the only things I could find was a video. It was a lengthy documentary recorded on someone's cell phone, which had two Malaysian folks in a small mountain village speaking about the Hantu Pari. And I'm going to be honest, while the automatic translation on YouTube was absolutely terrible, like to the point that I'm just not quoting anything from it because it was so bad. One thing was made blatantly obvious by the combination of the two people on camera who were repeatedly pointing. In the video's comments, I translated from Malay. The two men were repeatedly pointing at a large cave cut into the side of a nearby mountain. And the comments were all saying things like, quote, "That's where my grandpa told me they lived," end quote. And because there are keyboard quarterbacks everywhere, quote, "Why don't you go to investigate the cave and find them?" End quote.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's terrible. Now, in both cases, it appears that there is an actual physical cave these demons are said to descend from. And while I couldn't find the name of the mountain being pointed to in Malaysia, the mountain where the Kupe-Dybe of the Amazon, these demonic bat-like humanoids are said to reside, is literally called Bat Mountain, which to me tells a very obvious story of the people's observations. Whether we want to believe it's just bats, demons, or both, it's up to our very, very distant discretion.
It's crazy to think about the distinction between bats and like demons as well. People thinking that because they live at night, and people saying, you know, like, oh, they're like, they compare them. And even if you like look at some of the depictions of demons, they kind of look like bats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the idea of Batman, he's supposed to bring fear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Like his whole goal is to bring fear. So it's like what bats kind of do to people, even though they're pretty like harmless.
I'm gonna push back there. I understand what you're saying from a Western context, right? Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm bringing to it.
yeah, and that's very normal for most like, you know, European perception around like bats, right? As like darkness, dinginess, this and that and the other. But what often seems to be the case for folks who like actually live out in these rural areas, who live out in jungles, is a broader understanding of the complexities of their ecosystem, because that is what they're most plugged into, because frankly, they have little to no external distractions. That is their observation of their day-to-day life.
What distractions?
Right?
What would there
like,
be distractions? I mean,
like podcasts and the government.
yeah.
But you know, for these folks, like more than likely, you know, a bat is going to be just as legitimate of an animal as a beautiful golden finch.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of understanding these things, they probably have a way better grasp of like, hey, you know how mosquitoes fucking suck? These bats are fucking incredible, and we respect them for that because they've reduced the mosquito population, and we actually intentionally plant these trees and these fruits, and we build our villages next to here because there's more bats over here, which reduces the amount of mosquitoes, which reduces the amount that everybody in our fucking village dies of some terrible fucking disease.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot stronger of a connection because that is 99.999% of your observational world, right?
Yep.
So I'm cautious to say that it's just like bats live there, so do bat demons. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
because why aren't they finch demons? Why aren't they, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like any other number of things.
Yeah, and truth, I guess just about the idea that they only come out at night too. So I think that the idea behind it is that like they associate, at least just from looking in, like, you know, I'm not in this culture, I don't know much about the culture, but just looking in, it seems like that's the reference that they're going for. Not that they're saying bats are bad.
Yeah.
But that they just come out at night. You know, if we associate something that looks like a demon, it's not always bad, you know?
Yeah, I would say, and this might be giving a little bit much away, but like think about a bat's face and then think about a European gargoyle.
Yeah, exactly.
They look identical.
But have you ever seen a fruit bat's face? Those things are the cutest things.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, fruit bats, the best.
With all that said, though, I 100% believe these folks know the difference between a goddamn bat and a flying humanoid.
Oh, I am 100% sure they do, yes.
I would be more suspicious of a American city dweller going down there thinking that a fruit bat was a flying humanoid, as opposed to the locals who over thousands of years developed cultural references for what they witness and the intricacies of their human interactions with the external, like the ecology and stuff behind them, right? We give them
100%.
credit. Now, from the Amazon, we travel through space and time, back to the mythology of ancient Greece and the invisible world at play during legendary Greek battles. Known by 3 names, our next demon of war has been called the Letum, the Tenebrach, or, more commonly, the Cur. Quote, in ancient Greece, a cur was believed to be the vampiric spirit of a deceased person who had escaped the funeral jar that it was buried in. Curs are described as hideous women wearing red robes over their dark-skinned bodies. They were said to have black wings and long white fangs and nails. The curs were under the control of the Fates, killing only those that they are permitted to kill. The vampires begin their attack with a blood-curdling scream, and they then dive down and drink the blood of the dying on the battlefield and rip the souls from the bodies of the dying. Vengeful, plague-carrying beings, the curs have been known to control heroes on the battlefield. It was said that the Olympian gods themselves would stand invisibly on the battlefield and swat at incoming curs to keep them off their favorite heroes. Tar was often painted on the doorways to keep a cur from entering into a home. The idea was that the tar would stick to the cur if it tried to enter into the home, and it would be stuck in the doorway. To destroy one, it must be exorcised by ritual incantations. Curs played a prominent role in Homer's The Iliad. On March 4th, a 3-day ritual called Anthesterio was held to honor the curs, keeping them from attacking, end quote. Now, before we dive into our thoughts on the cur, I'd like to add one more demon of war to this mix. While hailing from a completely different continent, this demon's description, though brief, has, in my opinion, and maybe yours too, an uncanny resemblance to the Hantu Pari, the Kupe-Dybe, and the cur. Quote, the Pei are a species of vampiric demons from the lore of Sri Lanka and Tamil India. They feed off the blood from wounded warriors that they find on battlefields. A Pei first drains the warrior of his blood and then takes the body back to its home, where the corpse is cooked and eaten, end quote.
That's more horrifying than the other ones. No, because then they cook and eat you. You know, they're not just like draining you on the battlefield. They're like, nah, we're taking that back with us and barbecuing them.
So before we get into the 2 modern stories, which I promised up top, courtesy of U.S. troops fighting in Vietnam and in the Middle East, I think it would be a good time to have a brief chat about what we've picked up so far.
Yeah.
All across the world, there are demons being described almost identically as horrendous, flying vampiric humanoids that prey upon the bodies of fallen soldiers.
Yeah.
Further, besides the fact all of them are being described similarly, weight has to be given to the fact that their descriptions bridge time, continents, cultures, religions, mythology, and language.
Yeah.
In other words, people's observations of these similar demons were all recorded independently, and all of them fed on war.
Yeah, it's literally the same thing, which is so crazy to happen all over these time periods. And the idea that they're like vampires, they're taking blood from warriors. But one of the things I want to maybe try to delve into a little bit is like, would this be the idea that it's kind of a shame to die in battle, to be wounded in battle and then not die like fighting, just be dying on the battlefield? Because like it kind of scares you into just like going full brunt into either going full brunt into fighting or like not being scared. I mean, the way I think of it is like kind of trying to push you a little more, like instead of just being there to be like wounded and then just like let something come and take you, you know?
Yeah, and that's something I've been like struggling with going through this. Warfare is not exactly known for being calm.
Not at all.
At any place in time, in a relative sense, at every point in history, in human history and experience, it is the most extreme form of violence possible. That is the only thing that has ever progressed war, is how do we make this more extreme? We're constantly making it more intense.
Yep.
Shit that to us looks old-timey and cute back then was giving people absolutely horrible, terrible PTSD.
Yes.
And we have to look at our warfare now in 200 years, might be like, oh, that's cute.
Them babies, they're shooting metal bullets at each other.
Remember when they just killed each other instead of just evaporated planets in the dozens,
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Alderaan. But no, okay, so when we step back and we look at the psychology of that is a psychological breaking point for every single human being. And the strong, valiant warrior is the one who is able to rise above the shock and the fear and go courageously and valiantly and yada, yada, yada. It's pretty much the same everywhere. Well, coming up with these reasons and these cultural understandings of, hey, if you get a big cut, you might bleed the fuck out and die, Or there might be festering left from bodies on a field that might bring the plague, aka disease, right? Or any of and those things totally make sense to me as a natural way of people kind of trying to educate each other about war. Totally fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Why are they all describing the same entity?
Yeah, that's the weird thing.
That's where it gets a little bit different because it's like one culture might have some crazy fucking hippo with a straw for a tongue, and one might have this, and one might have... Why, when you're looking at fields of blood, why is the first thing that comes to mind, regardless of these completely separated and isolated cultures, why is it gargoyle-esque, bat-like, hideous-looking entities that are flying down to drain and drink the blood, sometimes taking the body, sometimes ripping out the fucking soul, eating them, but literally a flying bat-like humanoid creature is coming down just to fuck with people who are dying on a battlefield. Not when they're wounded in the forest, not when they're some other place.
No, only in the war. Yeah.
Just on a fucking battlefield. That's where it gets confusing to me.
Yeah, and poking holes into my own logic, which I love to do too as well, my own logic, is like the idea behind, I think it was in ancient Greece where they said they'd come down and they would control the heroes. To me, that's just like, oh, they're also able to control alive people, in Greece in that idea. But it's just in general, at least for Greece, because they're, really warmongering people, to be fair.
Yes.
Yes, them and the Romans. But like the whole idea behind it is that like it just covers all of war.
Yeah.
All of the battles. They're there in the beginning. They're there in the end. They're there in the middle, and the whole idea of it is that this is just like, this is something to be honestly afraid of, like in the whole general sense of it, because if like you get a cut in your leg in the battle, this thing will come down and suck the blood out. Not that it's meant to make you fear, but
but like there was zero connection between ancient Greece, Malaysia, and literally the Brazilian Amazon. There was no fucking way in hell when these mythologies, this folklore, the demonology behind it, when that was developed and when it was recognized by folks, there was no cross-pollination between cultural ideas at all.
Yeah.
But they're all describing the exact same fucking thing.
Yeah.
But like even the dark-skinned with like red wings. Go look at bats from Malaysia. They have reddish brown wings with dark skin. Even that translates to over and over. And then the first,
even their animal.
Yeah. Well, it's like, they're like, oh, it's these absolutely hideous looking ladies. They might have just been looking at these bat-like entities and been like, oh, they have a very effeminate figure. Because Greek women were slim. Greek men were fucking large.
Yeah. And they describe stuff as based on being on male or feminine, and that idea because of the way that they're portrayed in statues.
Exactly. So you have, like, when you think of a bat, you don't think of it as muscular, although now that I'm picturing a muscular bat, it's kind of funny.
It's creepy.
Bat. But
it's just Batman.
They're very skinny. Right. If you had to, I would say, assign an archetypical body profile, it would be effeminate.
I guess, yeah.
Right. As opposed to the classical Greek masculine body, which is just like every fucking muscle possible. It's like,
is popped. Yeah. Which is not like they were at all in general.
Yeah. So to me, even like just looking at, different languages, different cultures are going to have slightly different phrasing and references, obviously. That's how semiotics work. That's symbology. But they're basically describing the same fucking thing.
They are. Yeah. Just a bat-like demon.
One is ripping souls out from people after it drinks their blood and hauling them away. The other one is, after drinking all the blood, taking their body away. How do we know that the soul isn't attached to the body in one culture and that you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, truth.
One of them is like blood. Blood means blood. And like the battlefield means battlefield. It's where a bunch of people get together and fight. But where people start to define where the soul exists, we can't decide on that shit today, even when we're all talking to each other, right? If you believe in it.
Yeah.
And so the Greeks' interpretation versus, the interpretation of the tribe that's in the Amazon versus the folks that are in Malaysia versus, like, that's like really close, bro.
Yeah, what you just said made me think of something, especially too when you talked about the soul, where it resides, and like the idea behind where the soul was being pulled out on the battlefield, and the soul doesn't reside in the body in that form. But when they take them away and eat their body and roast it, they're eating the soul as well as the body, because if they take it as the same, the soul is part of the body. So either way, it could literally be the same idea of they're just eating their soul.
You really quickly get into like fine cultural like distinctions from a very clear boundary. And it's that very clear boundary where I'm just kind of looking at all these demons and I'm like, kind of all seem like the same dudes are doing this, like they're same, like
it's the damn Greys.
It's the Greys. So I don't know. I wanted to talk about that for a minute because we just went over 4 distinct demons from across the world and across time, across language, pre-interference from one another. There were tons of demons that all just kind of sound exactly the fucking same as these. But, it's the difference between, like, where modern-day Cambodia is and, say, like, Vietnam. There's a good chance they talked, at some point in time,
Yeah, they intermingled around there.
Yeah, and, like, there was a lot of areas where it was just, like, they were literally neighbors, or in terms of, like, overall heritage, right? It's very hard to distinguish between them. But they're all talking about the same demons. I picked these 4 out, though, because it's spread out across the goddamn planet, right?
Yeah.
Clearly spread out across time. The fact that, like, in Malaysia, the Hantu Pari was there before Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity came in really tells you there's some fucking roots in that.
Yeah.
So, for this next part, to start off with, I have to disclose this story, though very, very widely covered, has little to no dedicated resources. Like, source material at best is hearsay. But with that being said, all of the tales and lore being covered in this episode could also be dismissed and reduced to just being religious fantasy and hearsay.
Yep.
The reason I'm including it, I hope, will become obvious as the tale unfolds. Sometime in or around 1965, during the Vietnam War, the U.S. Army issued a new generation of night vision goggles to troops in a limited test run. They were effective, but in unexpected ways. This all resulted in soldiers only having them on the battlefield for 30 days before quickly being recalled by the Pentagon. You see, these particular early models of night vision goggles used red light instead of the now standard green. The thought process behind it was simple. The red light wouldn't ruin a soldier's natural night vision, meaning during operations, if a soldier was regularly putting them on and taking them off, the soldier's eyes wouldn't need a half an hour after using them for their eyes to adjust back to their natural night vision. I know we've talked about this before, but once your eyes get exposed to bright white light, right, and certain light spectrum, your pupils get really fucking tiny, and they take a long time to relax, allowing you to take in the most amount of light possible, which is why everybody's experienced this. You wake up in the middle of the night, you accidentally like turn on your phone and it's like poof, and then all of a sudden you went from being able to see in your room to completely fucking blind.
Yeah, to
like,
nothing. Yeah,
after that. Yeah, and it's also why pirates would wear eye patches. One eye was kept dark. I know you were going there, Joey.
Yes, sir.
One eye was kept dark because the other eye, which was out during the daylight, could fight along the top of the ship and yardy. And then they would go down below deck and they would flip their eye patch over to the other eye. That eye had been in darkness for a half an hour or more, and it was now able to see in the dark, effectively giving them better night vision. If they had just went straight from up deck to below deck without any protection on their eyes, they would have been blind as fucking slaughtered the second they walked below because it's dark as fuck below deck. So all of that shit said, red light does not affect the human eye that way. You can use a proper red spectrum flashlight at night, turn it on, get great vision and depth and see around you, and turn it off, and your eyes will be like there was no light that was ever on. They'll still be able to see well.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if also the red light, it didn't blind you if something was around. Like, because if you're using the green lights, if you're using green lights, obviously, when a flashbang hits or something like that, the blinds.
Yeah.
Like when you're looking through it, like, or if somebody turns on a big light at you, it blinds you because just like you were talking about, the eye dilates super small.
Yeah.
But I wonder if the red light also didn't do that because just the way that it was already looking at it wasn't bothering your eyes. So maybe that was another reason why they used it like that.
That makes total sense, especially these early gen night vision goggles, the green ones. And a bright light, like a massive explosion happens next to you, you can quite literally burn your cornea.
Yep.
Like it will fucking fry your eyes. You will be blind. It's not a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, the red light was inherently safer. But these goggles, right? So these early night vision goggles, they weren't first gen, which often gets reported. That's totally false. They were Starlight scopes since World War I. But these actual goggles were mostly issued to Army airborne troops with one stipulation. Officers and helicopter pilots were ordered not to use them. This, on a practical level, makes sense. Even to this day, if you look up night vision goggles in the military, there's lawsuits that are going on around helicopter pilots, night vision goggles, and terrible crashes that could have been avoided. They're not good for flying helicopters.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you're going to hit stuff so easily. I'm sure you're going to miss so many things.
Well, within a week, the men who had been issued the goggles began acting strange, becoming more and more agitated, while at the same time, they began regularly complaining about seeing things that the officers and pilots couldn't see. Under this growing tension, it became noted that those who wore the goggles became hyper-fixated and focused on the tops of trees. Fast forward now to one night when a helicopter squadron was flying in a tight formation while on patrol over what was considered to be a friendly region, Vietnam. Lights were off while the troops, including the gunners, were staring off into the jungle with their night vision turned on. Suddenly, one of the 50 cal gunners opened fire and began blasting horizontally, firing not at the ground, but along the treetops, narrowly missing the helicopters flying right next to him.
Ooh.
Immediately, the neighboring choppers broke formation in an attempt to dodge the friendly fire. All the while, the commanding officer, riding with the gunner, began screaming, ordering him to cease fire and explain himself. But the gunner yelled back. Freaking out, the man started screaming, "Demons! Demons are flying everywhere! They're flying towards us!" The CO quickly yelled back, "Remove your goggles!" When the gunner finally complied, the CO noticed he was drenched in sweat and visibly horrified. Well aware of the prevalent drug use by soldiers during the war at this time, upon inspection, it was clear to the CO that the gunner was sober. At this point, for the safety of all of his men, the CO decided to disobey orders and put on the red light night vision goggles. And that's when everyone on the helicopter heard him cry out, "Oh, fuck!" He was witnessing humanoid-looking demons swarming along the treetops, flying towards the helicopter, and if that wasn't enough, there seemed to be an obvious awareness. They were reacting because he could now see them.
Oof.
Some of the demons pointed straight at him and began heading towards the helicopter. They literally had that moment of just like, oh, he can see us. Yeah, that guy over there. And they started fucking heading towards him.
Yeah.
Right?
That's awful.
This is horrifying.
That's like honestly, like just comparing that's like a dream I had when I was young. And it was just not to veer off subject too much, but a dream I had when I was young. But I was sitting on top of a slide, and over a hill was a bunch of velociraptors, and they would only run at me if I could see them, if I looked at them, and they knew I looked at them. And like, so every time it's hard not to look at them because they're velociraptors on the thing. So like, I can imagine what this guy is thinking.
Yeah.
Being like, oh shit, they know I'm looking at them, and to like even turn away, that probably wouldn't help because they know that he can see them, you know, and the idea how freaked out you would be if you just see this thing no one else is seeing. You literally were looking in that same direction not more than 5 minutes ago or 2 minutes before you put those glasses on. And then you okay, cool. Like, this guy is obviously probably crazy. You're going into it thinking this guy on the 50 cal machine gun to protect us is probably like a little off his rocker for the moment, even though this is new tech, right?
So keep in mind too, so other than the dim light of like the dashboard and shit like that, the actual controls and stuff in the helicopter, right, which were dimmed down as far as they could go, the commanding officer, right, the CO, and the pilots, they were in the dark.
Yeah.
So as far as the CO knew, there may have actually been something out there that this gunner was just freaking out about.
For sure.
Because to him, it was the dark canopy tops of a jungle.
Yeah.
So when he put on the night vision goggles, it was kind of like, okay, I really fucking doubt that he's seeing demons, but I also doubt that he's not seeing something.
Yeah.
This guy is clearly sober and he's scared shitless right now. I need to make a decision for this squadron of helicopters in terms of how we should react right now.
Yeah.
Fuck it, I'm putting on these night vision goggles or we all might die. I mean, what if there was, North Vietnamese that were like hiding up in the fucking trees or some shit and like
with rockets or something that could affect
any
them.
number of things. Yeah, and he's like, fuck it, I need to see what all of my troops are seeing. Right, all of my units.
Yeah, because if I need to order us to move, get in a certain position so that we can not be hit. Yeah, it's like, so he needs to know so that he can make the best educated guess. Yeah, and then seeing demons.
Yeah, and then he was like, oh fuck, no wait, they are demons.
Yeah.
Shit. And like, not just that, but they're actively pointing at me now because I saw them. This is horrifying.
He's like, I just kind of wish they were North Vietnamese, actually, now. Now I wish they were North Vietnamese troops.
Never thought I'd say it, but...
Careful what you wish for.
Kind of miss Ho Chi Minh right now. So, obviously, we're at the point where the demons were pointing straight at him, realizing that he could now see them, right? So that, hey, that dude can see us. They start swarming towards him. The CO then ripped the goggles off and got on the radio just immediately, ordering everyone under his command to remove theirs and never put them on again. Basically, he was like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but everybody needs to take this off right now, which in terms of saving the sanity of everybody involved, probably a good idea.
Sure.
Right? Like,
I wonder if they all could see it, though, or if, someone were just calmer about it, And maybe they're just like, this is just the PTSD I've gone through. It's normal.
It's just
this
like
is normal.
It's just like Craig from Iowa is just like,
so you ain't gonna believe this, but here's a little trick that I learned the other day. When they tell all of us to turn on these night vision goggles and just kind of stare off, I clip myself to the helicopter. CO's over there, you can't even fucking see this. Clip myself to the helicopter. I never turn the goggles on. I just take a fucking nap. I've been napping for 3 days.
3 days. He never even knew.
He can't see a goddamn thing. He thinks that I'm looking out. I'm taking a fucking nap, bro. Anyways, y'all should try it.
So that gunner was the only one. He was the least popular in my idea of this situation. I think the demons were there, but everybody else learned this nap trick that they could take over the next few days. Yeah. Well, reports of situations and sightings exactly like this poured in from other units over the next few weeks, leading the Pentagon to quickly recall the red light night vision goggles. Again, these were issued during Vietnam, like the war is going on. They're active duty immediately, and immediately everybody, in this story, is freaking out seeing demons in the treetops flying around.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about the testing is that maybe they weren't actually testing them in live war settings. The idea behind it is that, when they're testing it, they're just like, oh, cool, go on the range. It's not a live war. But then they're going in the live war where there's people shot, people killed, bombings going on. And they're like, oh, that's on the battlefield.
And yeah, exactly. What do we know from the first 4 demons? These first 4 flying, vampiric, like gargoyle-looking demons, which Soldier had described in the story as gargoyle-like with horns, only pop up in battlefields and around war.
Yep.
So testing these goggles back in the States and da-da-da-da-da and all this other shit, the actual stress testing out there, of course they wouldn't see those demons. They're not there. That's not where they hang out.
They hang out by where people are dying, people are shot, people are in either the highest tense place they could ever be, or they're about to die, and they're probably in the lowest tense of the place they could be because they're not even paying attention what's going on around.
Well, back to my start, the reason why I kind of broke it down that way is that we look at the decomposition of human bodies on a battlefield. It's the rats pouring through. It's the cockroaches. It's the vultures. It's the crows. It's the animals coming in and picking apart the remains of bodies. But what we don't often think about, or at least I never really thought about, what does that decomposition look like in the spirit world? So if we look at the way that, patterns and an ecology, it repeats itself from an atomic level up to a universe and a galaxy, right? Type of level, the same types of patterns of cycles and shit like that.
Yeah.
To think if there was a spirit world, right, or an afterlife or whatever, that it would be any different is contrary to literally every single law of physics that exists. That's the opposite. Yeah. It's no, this all repeats. So kind of frankly, the magical phrasing around as above, so below, right? So you have, on our surface, we see the decomposition. We see that. We see the birds swarming over the field, waiting to come in on the bodies. We see the rats pouring up. Why wouldn't the same thing be happening on battlefields, but on the spiritual plane? The fact that these entities are all being described almost exactly the same fucking way gives an argument towards that spiritual plane. Towards that shit happening.
Yeah.
Which is fucking wild to me. Well, as for the soldiers who had briefly used these goggles and were exposed to their hellish visions, it was reported that effects similar to PTSD plagued them for months, with many of these men saying that the creatures had singled them out once they had put on the goggles. Over and over again, the reports that apparently or supposedly or allegedly came in, reason why everybody was fixated on the treetops is because they were looking at these flying winged humanoid creatures who, when they had the goggles on, made direct eye contact with them and were focusing on them. And were only focusing on the people wearing these goggles because they were aware, oh, you can see us now.
Ugh.
Yeah, dude.
That's the idea, too, of us when we talk to Damien from, RKB, the idea behind it is that, you can be seen, that you can take stuff home with you. And that once you're on that plane, either, in this general sense, in that style of sense, they don't really necessarily see the literal shape of this thing and the eyesight, the eye line beelining towards you, but you feel the focus of it. And I think that's kind of a similar idea of this other plane that we're talking about. That their focus is now on you when you can take it. It comes home with you if you, you make it known that they're there.
Yeah.
And I think that they had the physical version of it where now it's just literally following them instead of the spiritual kind of version of it where they're in Damien's case, or if you go to haunted houses, that it's not as much of a visual for you.
Yeah. Well, it makes you wonder, why did the Greeks put tar around their doorframe in order to trap cur and to prevent them from coming into their house when these cur only showed up on battlefields?
Yeah.
Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah. That makes it even creepier.
When y'all make that fucking eye contact across the room, they're not leaving you alone, dude.
They're coming to you till you die.
Yeah, or something.
Or they get bored, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they get bored and they're just like, this person sucks.
One of our first two demons, they were also known to go to hospitals.
Yep.
Where do a bunch of motherfuckers who just saw shit on a battlefield end up if they're still holding on to life?
The hospital.
Bro, they're coming for their meal.
Yep, that's literally the next spot. They're like, look, you can't get away from me.
Do you see why this shit trips me out so much, though?
It's so creepy. It's so creepy, though, too, because to actually have the idea behind, like, yeah, we, even just saying, like, it's easier to look back and say something, oh, that's a little crazier when it's farther past in time, right?
Yeah.
Because the idea of, like, I don't know, we think of aliens the same way. It's easier to, like, think back, oh, maybe the pharaohs and whatever, aliens, all that stupid stuff when they talked about aliens making the pyramids and stuff, which they didn't. They used a bunch of slave labor to do it. But to think of it nowadays, it gives it, I don't know, just even a little more credence that it has gone across, just like we started this, across the time and across continents where people don't even have connection, just like you said, that they are seeing things now that they saw without goggles, and to think about like that they had to protect themselves, and now we throw it out as like, it's whatever, it's stupid. But back then it was like, that is what you see. It's happening, and whether it's about everybody agreeing, and who knows, maybe people back in like the Greek times and, in Malaysia and stuff like that, they didn't all agree. There's probably a couple people on the battlefield being like, yeah, I saw it for sure. And most everybody else being like, you didn't see anything.
Yeah.
And the same thing now, really people don't change either. So with same brain, as we always say, we're still having that conversation of like these people in Vietnam seeing it and being like, I know what I saw, and they're like seeing it.
Yeah.
And then like, people being like, nah, did you though?
Yeah. No. I 100%. The legitimacy from it is not just the stress of battle. It's not just the loss of blood or explaining plagues or yada, yada, yada. The legitimacy to me is it's passing continents, time, cultures, religions, belief systems, exposure. Like it's when there was no cross-pollination.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, the soldiers and the person who documented the story later had no clue about the Hantu Pari. They had no clue about, the tribe in the Amazon who was explaining this indigenous tribe or collection of folks who only had, 2,277 people, right? Like maybe at the time they had 3,000, or 4,000. They weren't referencing them when they were in Vietnam, right?
No.
And it's just like, I'm not saying that people's minds can't break the same way, and if anything's going to break them, war will break them. But
always does.
But like, why is everybody breaking with the same hallucination? And in the hallucination, the behavior's the same, the description's the same, the follow-up of the creatures are the same.
Yeah, they continuously come after you.
Reading through it, I had already known the night vision goggles case, like from before I was reading into the Encyclopedia of Demons, which that's kind of where my mind got triggered. I was like,
yeah,
this sounds familiar. This sounds really familiar. Holy fuck! What the fuck? This has been going on for how long?
Yeah.
I thought this was one-off fucking weird thing in Vietnam. Apparently, they're constant trouble on the battlefield.
They're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, as promised, bringing it up even further to modern day, our next story comes to us from a YouTube channel called Wartime Stories, which I'm not going to lie, is a fantastic resource for paranormal tales told by military veterans from all around the world. That's basically the whole plot to this, is they have military veterans from India, from Canada, from the United States, from the UK, who are just sharing their paranormal stories on this channel. That's really cool. Yeah, it's really fucking dope. Well, this specific video is called Terrifying Supernatural Encounters in a War Zone. Pretty straightforward. And it's quoting a military forum post by an army medic who was serving in Iraq in 2006 and first shared her story in 2020. Quote, "She said that in addition to not reporting this incident for obvious reasons, she and her fellow soldiers avoided sharing this story to avoid the ridicule. But she insists this story happened exactly as she describes it. She writes, "My unit in the U.S. Army was deployed to Iraq in April 2006. We were in Ramadi. It was 123 kilometers, 77 miles outside of Baghdad. It was in a Humvee heading to Baghdad for emergency leave due to a death in my family. It was close to midnight. The Humvee I was in had 3 others and a turret gunner. 2 other Humvees with us had the same. 5 total people in each one, with 1 truck in front of mine and 1 in the back. We're in the truck in the middle. I didn't have my rifle due to having already been checked out on leave, so all of a sudden, the Humvee in front of us slammed on the brakes hard, and we all figured it was a possible IED or VBID. The team leader and our HV radioed the lead HV. Just then, in the desert off the highway, all of us saw what looked like a black figure. It looked like a huge bird, and it looked like smoke was emitting from it, a blackish greenish smoke with a bit of blue tinge. So we were all trying to focus our nods on what we were seeing, and the 2 troops in our truck that had better nods than anybody else said they could see something but couldn't make out what it was. The smoke was distorting the view. Within a second or two, a rock was thrown at one of the HVs. It was a big rock, like the size of someone's head, and we all froze. Due to the rules of engagement, we couldn't just light this thing up, so we used a spotlight on it. Whatever this thing was, it just flew straight up, and simultaneously, we heard a loud screeching noise. All of this happened very quickly. We all sat there in a state of mingled shock, curiosity, and panic? And what the hell was that thing? When we got to Baghdad, we rendezvoused with an Iraqi translator that we were picking up to bring to the Marines that were with us. He told us quite plainly it sounded like you encountered an Ifrit. One of the team leaders responded, A what? An Ifrit, this guy said, a winged jinn. We were all a bit speechless, and we chose not to disclose to our commander this winged thing that we saw. Battle fatigue, now more commonly known as PTSD, that was a career killer at this juncture. Been 30 years since this happened. I met my now husband in 2015, a fellow soldier, and coincidentally, he had also been deployed to Ramadi with my sister, Unit 26 Infantry Division at the time. He had also passed down this particular stretch of highway on his mid-deployment leave. He eventually recounted a story to me about something he saw, which completely shocked me because it was very similar to my story. The exception that they never stopped. They just said, screw it, and just boogied on through. They didn't stop their vehicles.
That's the smart thing, I think.
Yes. End quote. Now, the retired Army medic would go on later in their story to note how, to this day, again, they were writing this in 2020, right? Them and their husband, who had both encountered this thing, was continuing to cause problems from house to house as they established their life, retired from the military, and settled down back in the United States. So what do you think, Joey?
It followed them. I think they need to put tar on their door.
Should probably reach out to. I do have their username. I should probably reach out to them and be like,
yeah, just be like, hey, the Greeks used to use tar on their doors to stop this thing from following them.
I'm just going to say, would it hurt? Would it hurt?
It would not
Would it
hurt.
hurt?
No, the only thing you're going to have to do is mop every once in a while. What does that matter?
Probably going to help keep sugar ants out of the house, honestly. And who doesn't want help with that?
That's
Especially
true.
this time of year.
I freaking hate sugar ants. They're in my house all the time. I'm going to put tar in my door. I don't even have problems with the vampire killer, soul-sucking, blood-sucking.
I wish that was my problem. These fucking sugar ants.
Yeah. Yeah, these sugar ants are the worst. They're worse than them.
Goddamn. Dude, But what did you think about this, Joey? I know I get too far into research sometimes, and I get too far into like, I see a connection. You know, I go Charlie from It's Always Sunny, but like, this shit, I don't know, man. That fucked with me.
There's definitely connections there. I definitely see, especially when the army medic specifically says it screeches, and that
Yup.
in most of the other stories are screeching, and the idea behind it is that it's screeching as it comes down. They're definitely in wartime situation, being in Baghdad in 2006, especially because that was,
Yeah.
I would say, very close to after they defeated. I think they defeated them in 2003. We don't have to go into the specifics about why it was that easy, but
Yeah.
but still, you know, with IEDs going around and probably people have been killed so much on that road, especially coming out of Baghdad. There's probably stuff looking for people, and that being part of the war, and probably one of the only wars, really true wars happening at that time, you know, because I doubt there's big enough wars to, you know, it's not Ukraine and Russia at the moment. That's pretty much their Iraq, you know, in general sense, but it would make sense that that's where they would be in a modern day situation.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up too. I would say keep an eye out for soldiers from Russia and Ukraine. Who start talking about demonic, bat-like, winged entities that are flying around, sucking the blood of soldiers and attacking them. Specifically, if anybody's around to give that testimony, if they're being followed by them later in life.
Yep.
I'm going to say, too, I didn't even include this because we're going to make this a later episode. I found cases from World War II that are way better documented than the shit from Vietnam, where U.S. soldiers were claiming to experience the same shit, including at least one case where it's documented a half of a fucking base on one of the islands in Japan opened fire in the middle of the day on this shit. I don't know if these are actual demonic creatures, like in the sense of an actual spiritual entity demonic creature, or if there's an actual large fucking creature that's popping up, because you have to consider in the situations of warfare, every nook, cranny, and crevice is being burned the fuck down, bombed, or both. And if there is any random fucking creepy ass cryptids, right, hiding around and chilling out in the mountains that might just be going down, taking out a water buffalo here and there and yada, yada, yada. When they've got no place to hide because militaries and shit are burning everything to the fucking ground, gassing them, bombing the fuck, trying to shake people out of their tunnels in the fucking mountains, right?
Yeah.
If they're trying to make it so literally the ants can't even fucking hide, like let alone humans. The ants can't even fucking hide in the mountains. That also means any large, really obscure cryptids, they wouldn't be able to hide. They would bust the fuck out of the ground, and they're not going to be on their home turf, and they might go out hunting.
Interesting. I think that would be a cool episode for wartime cryptids.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of the Black Cat Report. As always, we fucking love you, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Watch out for General Sasquatch.
Vampires. Holy goddamn shit.